On October 8, 2009, Bobby Jamison, 44, his wife Sherilynn, 40, and their 6-year-old daughter Madyson set out from their home in Eufaula, Oklahoma for a trip to the remote San Bois Mountains and never returned. In the days that followed, the Jamison family's pickup truck was found abandoned on a dirt road deep in the woods, containing nearly all their belongings and even their pet dog. But no sign of Bobby, Sherilynn, or little Madyson. The unsettling circumstances of the case, an untouched pile of cash left behind, a starving dog waiting in the truck, and eerie clues about the family's state of mind, have made the Jamison disappearance one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries in recent American history. Bobby and Sherilynn Jamison, along with their 6-year-old daughter Madyson, vanished during a trip to Oklahoma's San Bois Mountains in October 2009. Their mysterious disappearance and the later discovery of their remains has perplexed investigators for over a decade. The Jamisons' white pickup truck was discovered locked and in good condition on a dirt track in Latimer County, Oklahoma, about an hour's drive from their home, just over a week after they were last seen. Inside the vehicle were the family's wallets, IDs, mobile phones, Sherilynn's purse, coats, a GPS unit, and approximately $32,000 in cash stuffed in a bag under the seat. Even more heartbreakingly, the Jamisons' small dog, Maisie, was found alive but severely malnourished, having survived days locked in the truck without food or water. The truck had fuel and was functional, and there were no signs of a struggle or foul play at the scene. It was as if the family had simply walked away into the woods and vanished into thin air. Investigators launched a massive search of the mountainous area, with hundreds of volunteers, tracking dogs, horses, ATVs, and even drones combing the wilderness. Yet no trace of the Jamisons was found in the immediate aftermath of the truck's discovery. For 4 long years, the fate of the Jamison family remained a complete mystery, spawning countless theories, from drug deal gone wrong to cult murder, from murder-suicide to getting lost in the wilderness, but no definitive answers. Then, in November 2013, hunters stumbled upon skeletal remains in a rugged area only a few miles from where the truck had been found. Those remains were later confirmed to belong to Bobby, Sherilynn, and Madyson Jamison. Shockingly, due to advanced decomposition, autopsies could not determine a cause of death for any of the 3. The Jamison case thus shifted from a missing persons search to a chilling cold case, one marked by bizarre clues and rampant speculation, but very few solid leads. In this deep dive, we will explore the background of the Jamison family, the eerie details of their disappearance, the discovery of their bodies, and the leading theories that attempt to explain what might have happened on that fateful day in the mountains. The Jamison family lived in Eufaula, Oklahoma, and by all accounts they kept a low profile, often preferring to stay to themselves. Both Bobby and Sherilynn were experiencing difficulties in the years leading up to their disappearance. Bobby had been in a serious car accident in 2003 that left him with chronic back pain, preventing him from working and prompting him to go on disability benefits. Sherilynn suffered from bipolar disorder and bouts of severe depression, for which she had been prescribed medication, though it's unclear how consistently she took it. Their marriage was reportedly strained by these health issues and financial stresses. They were not employed and were living on disability checks, and friends noted the couple seemed unhappy and occasionally fought. In fact, an 11-page handwritten letter later found in the family's truck, apparently written by Sherilynn, was essentially a lengthy hate letter to Bobby, listing all the things she hated about him and stating she wanted a divorce. This letter suggested significant marital discord, although family and friends would later caution that Sherilynn's emotional swings, due to her mental health, might have driven her to write angry notes that she never actually intended to act on. Sherilynn had been married before. She had a son named Colton from a previous relationship. In the summer of 2009, just months before the family's disappearance, Sherilynn lost custody of 12-year-old Colton in July 2009. Colton's father took the boy to live with him. During the custody hearing, Colton testified that his mother's mental state was deteriorating. He described Sherilynn as very depressed and said she often acted strangely. In September 2009, about a month after losing custody of her son, Sherilynn was hospitalized following a failed suicide attempt. These events indicate that Sherilynn was in a fragile mental and emotional state in the period leading up to October 2009. Friends later said that despite her love for Madyson, Sherilynn's depression was profound around that time. and Bobby was also described as being in considerable pain and withdrawn due to his back injury. Adding another layer of strangeness, both Bobby and Sherilynn had become increasingly preoccupied with spiritual or supernatural matters in the months before they vanished. They told a local pastor, Gary Brandon, that they believed their home was haunted by dark spirits, and even that their 6-year-old daughter Madyson had begun talking to an imaginary friend called Emily, who they suspected might be an evil entity. Sherilynn was said to have dabbled in what she considered witchcraft. A friend admitted that she and Sherilynn would sometimes conduct seances for fun, though Sherilynn took them more seriously than her friend did. Sherilynn had spray-painted odd graffiti messages on a storage container the family kept on their property, including references to witches and her black cats being poisoned by neighbors. She wrote, cryptically, 3 cats killed to date by people in this area. Witches don't like it when their cats are killed. She apparently believed someone in the neighborhood had killed her cats, and the painted slogans were meant to spook whoever she thought the culprit was. Friends of the Jamisons did concur that the Jamison house had an uncomfortable or heavy atmosphere. The family and even visitors reported eerie feelings there. Sherilynn's best friend, Nikki Chenault, later said, "That house was haunted. I don't want to sound crazy, but whenever I went there I felt a horrible presence. I would leave feeling so down and depressed." Bobby, for his part, became so concerned about these supposed paranormal intruders that he asked Pastor Brandon if there were special bullets he could use to shoot the spirits he believed were living on the roof of his house. In a further bizarre twist, Sherilynn purchased what was described as a satanic Bible, allegedly as a joke, but Bobby later told the pastor that he had read from it and was considering using it in an attempt to expel the evil beings from their property. After the Jamisons went missing, investigators indeed found an occult book, sometimes referred to as a witchcraft or satanic Bible, in their house, along with those strange messages painted outside. All of these details paint a picture of a troubled family dealing with illness, depression, fear, and possibly delusions in the lead-up to their disappearance. It's important to note these elements because they have informed some of the theories about what might have happened. Some have wondered if drug use might have been a factor, though no direct evidence of this was found in their home, or if their belief in dark spirits and talk of spiritual warfare could indicate they were influenced by someone or something unusual. However, despite their personal struggles, there was no indication from friends or relatives that the Jamisons were planning to harm themselves or run away. In fact, they appeared to be planning for the future. Specifically, they were planning a relocation to a new piece of property where they hoped to start fresh. By early October 2009, Bobby and Sherilynn Jamison were considering a significant life change, moving out to a rural plot of land in the mountains. They had their eye on a 40-acre parcel of land near Red Oak, Oklahoma, in the Sandsboy Mountains about 30 miles from their Eufaula home. The idea was to live a simple life off the grid. They even already owned a large storage container that they intended to convert into a cabin or home once they acquired the land. The mountain property was undeveloped and remote, but the Jamisons seemed attracted by the seclusion and the chance to start anew in nature. On October 8, 2009, the Jamisons set off to scout that plot of land. They drove their white pickup truck out toward the mountains. Records indicate that Bobby and Sherilynn met with an associate of the landowner that day, presumably to discuss the land sale or inspect the area. After this meeting, the family's movements are partially known through a mix of later testimony, recovered items, and speculation. It appears that after speaking with the landowner's representative, the Jamisons parked their truck and went for a short walk, roughly 15 minutes, in the surrounding area. They likely took along a handheld GPS unit during this walk, possibly to mark coordinates or find a particular spot on the hillside that they were interested in. Indeed, investigators later found the GPS in the truck with coordinates that indicated the family had wandered about a quarter mile from the road to a spot overlooking the area, then returned to the vehicle. It seems after this brief hike, they got back in the truck and drove a little further along a dirt track. At some point after this, something happened that remains a total mystery. The Jamisons' pickup truck was left locked and abandoned in the middle of that dirt road in a rugged area of the Sandsboy Range, and the family of 3 vanished. There were no eyewitnesses, aside from the landowner's associate who saw them earlier that day, who reported seeing the Jamisons in distress. The timeline is a bit hazy, but based on later investigations, it's likely that the Jamisons disappeared on October 8th, or possibly the 9th of 2009, shortly after that exploratory hike. They never made it back home to Eufaula. In fact, no one even realized they were missing for over a week, because the Jamisons had kept to themselves and Madyson was already not attending school. The family had unenrolled her, perhaps due to the impending move or other issues. Friends and some relatives didn't immediately raise alarm when they couldn't reach them for a few days, since it wasn't unheard of for Bobby and Sherilynn to drop off the radar for a short time or take impromptu trips. It wasn't until Saturday, October 17, 2009, 9 days after the Jamisons were last seen, that a discovery brought their quiet disappearance into public view. On October 17, 2009, a group of hunters on dirt bikes came across an unsettling sight on a remote dirt road in Latimer County, Oklahoma. A white pickup truck, sitting seemingly abandoned in the brush. The truck was about an hour's drive from the Jamisons' home in the Panola Mountain Red Oak area of the Sans-Bois Mountains. Initially, the hunters thought the vehicle might have been stolen or simply left there temporarily. They reported the find to the local sheriff's office, noting that it looked as if it had only been there a few hours. But upon a closer look, it became clear the truck had actually been there for days. It was locked, dusty, and the belongings inside didn't look like they had been disturbed recently. The same hunter called back later that day and told police he believed the truck had been there for several days, not just a few hours. When Latimer County law enforcement arrived and ran the plates, they realized the truck belonged to the missing Jamison family, who by that point were beginning to be reported missing by concerned relatives. Sheriff Israel Beauchamp, the Latimer County sheriff at the time, initially suspected the vehicle might have been stolen and dumped, but what they found inside quickly suggested something far more serious had occurred. Investigators pried open the truck, since it was locked, and discovered a trove of the family's personal items left behind. Wallets and IDs of both Bobby and Sherilynn's purse, with her credit cards, money, and driver's license still in it. Cell phones. There were 2 functional mobile phones found in the truck, one belonging to Bobby and one to Sherilynn. GPS navigation unit. The GPS device the family had taken on their walk was found in the vehicle and later checked for coordinates, which showed the path of their short hike earlier that day. Maps and a substantial amount of cash. Astonishingly, investigators discovered $32,000 in cash, rolled up in a plastic bag stashed under the driver's seat. This baffled police because the Jamisons were not wealthy, both were on disability income, and not known to carry large sums of cash. To find such a large amount of money abandoned was a huge red flag. Clothing, coats, and other supplies. The family had packed jackets and cold weather gear for the trip, which were still in the truck. This indicated they hadn't taken their coats with them out of the vehicle, a worrying sign since the weather in the mountains could get chilly or turn bad. The family dog, Maisie. Perhaps the most heartbreaking discovery was the Jamisons' small dog, alive but extremely malnourished and dehydrated after being trapped in the truck for days. The dog was barely clinging to life. She had been without food or water and enduring warm daytime temperatures inside that vehicle. The fact that the dog survived it all is remarkable, and it also indicated that the Jamisons likely left the truck intending to come back very shortly, as they would never knowingly leave their beloved dog locked in a car to starve. It was immediately clear to Sheriff Beauchamp and the deputies that this was no ordinary lost vehicle. The presence of the family's intact valuables, cash, IDs, phones, ruled out robbery as a motive at the truck site. And the condition of the truck itself was good. It had gas in the tank, it had not crashed or gotten stuck, and it started up without trouble when tested. Moreover, there were no obvious signs of a struggle or violence at the scene. No blood, no broken glass, no damage to the truck's exterior. Investigators did note some litter and disarray inside the truck. It looked like the Jamisons had packed a lot of stuff somewhat chaotically. One intriguing item found in the vehicle was the aforementioned 11-page letter that Sherilynn had written to Bobby. This lengthy, scrawling note was described by law enforcement as a hate letter, in which Sherilynn vented a great deal of frustration at her husband, accusing him of not caring enough about Madyson, calling him a hermit and loner, and threatening divorce. While it certainly painted a picture of marital troubles, Sheriff Beauchamp later said he didn't believe the letter was directly connected to the disappearance. Realizing they had a missing family on their hands in rough terrain, the Latimer County Sheriff's Office immediately organized a large-scale search operation. Over the next days, dozens of officers and hundreds of volunteers scoured the area. In total, estimates say 400 or more volunteers joined the search, Aided by horses, mules, all-terrain vehicles, 16 teams of cadaver dogs, and even an unmanned drone to survey from the air. The searchers combed through miles of rugged forest, hills, and creeks around Panola Mountain and the Smokestack Hollow area. One notable focus point was a large water tank not far from the truck. The cadaver dog teams alerted near this water tank multiple times, suggesting the possible presence of human remains or scent in that vicinity. In response, investigators had the tank drained completely, but found no evidence or trace of the Jamisons at the bottom. The repeated false alerts puzzled the teams. Despite these hits, nothing concrete was located there. The surrounding wilderness was searched exhaustively over a 2-3 mile radius from the truck. Search crews had hoped that if the family was lost or injured, they would be found within that range. But no clothing, footprints, or physical evidence of the Jamisons turned up during those initial searches. This was perplexing. As Sheriff Beauchamp noted, the sheer size of the search and the resources used should have found some trace if the family was simply lost nearby. The total absence of any sign raised early suspicions that foul play might be involved. Perhaps the family had been removed from the area by someone or intentionally taken somewhere else. Despite extensive efforts, by late October 2009, the search was scaled back. There was simply no clue to follow. The Jamison family had vanished without a trace. The local sheriff at the time gave an apt summary of the situation. "A lot of investigators would love to have as many leads as we do. The problem is they point in so many different directions. Indeed, early leads and tips that poured in were bewilderingly varied. Some suggested the family had been killed by some criminal element. Others suggested they deliberately disappeared or had even faked their deaths to start a new life. For over 4 years, the mystery lingered. The case periodically made the news, including a feature on the investigation Discovery TV show Disappeared in late 2010, which brought national attention to the bizarre circumstances. But despite the spotlight and thousands of man-hours of investigation, no resolution was in sight. That finally changed with an unexpected discovery in late 2013. On November 16, 2013, in the midst of deer hunting season, 2 hunters wandering through a remote area called Smokestack Hollow, about 2.7 miles from where the Jamison truck had been found, stumbled upon skeletal remains in the brush. The location was extremely isolated, a hilly, wooded spot that was not on a trail, far from any easy road access. The remains appeared to be of 2 adults and 1 small child, lying next to each other on the forest floor. The hunters immediately notified law enforcement, and given the proximity to the area of the Jamison disappearance, there was little doubt whose remains these likely were. Officers who arrived noted that what they found were 3 skulls and a collection of scattered bones, along with shreds of clothing and shoes that would fit a man, woman, and young girl. The skeletal remains were not intact bodies. Years of exposure to the elements and scavenging animals had resulted in them being dispersed and in poor condition. It was obvious the remains had been there for a long time, exposed to 4 years of weather and likely moved about by wildlife. Even so, the fact that all 3 sets of remains were found together strongly indicated that the Jamison family's final resting place had been discovered. The location of the bodies raised immediate questions. How had such an extensive search missed them back in 2009? The area had indeed been within the general zone searched within 3 miles of the truck. Search organizers later noted that the spot where the remains lay was extremely rugged and easy to overlook, and that the likely cause for missing them was the thick fall foliage in October-November of 2009. By the time the search was fully underway in late October 2009, leaves were falling off trees in large numbers. It's believed the bodies might have been concealed under fallen leaves and thus not visible from the air, or even from a few yards away. One Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation agent said in 2013 that falling leaves potentially obscured the bodies during the initial search. If the Jamisons died in early October, by mid-October their bodies might have been covered by leaves, then later snow, and essentially buried in nature's camouflage. After the discovery in 2013, the remains were sent to the medical examiner and forensic labs. By July 3, 2014, 8 months later, authorities publicly confirmed through forensic testing that the remains were indeed those of Bobby, Sherilynn, and Madyson Jamison. This brought a heartbreaking end to any hope that the family might somehow still be alive. However, It did not bring the answers that everyone hoped for. The medical examiner reported that the cause of death for all three could not be determined. The official autopsy rulings were unknown for each family member. The level of decomposition was simply too severe. There was no soft tissue left at all, and many bones were missing or damaged by animals. The examiner noted there were no obvious signs of traumatic injury on the bones that were recovered, such as bullet holes or knife marks, but also cautioned that due to incomplete remains, foul play could not be ruled out either. In essence, they found nothing conclusive. No bullet lodged in a skull, no broken bones to indicate an assault or fall. However, they couldn't definitively say the Jamisons died of natural causes or exposure either. It's as if the forest simply swallowed them up and refused to yield the secret of how they died. There were a couple of small curious details noted in the recovery of the remains. A single dried flower was found with the remains of Madyson, perhaps something the little girl had picked up that day and was carrying. And near Bobby's remains, searchers found a fragment of what was described as a flexible material with a cloth on one side, though it's unclear if this was part of a shoe, clothing, or something unrelated. These bits didn't illuminate much but are documented in the case file. One point of contention did arise. Reportedly, one of the skulls, perhaps Bobby's, had what appeared to some to be a small bullet hole. At the time the remains were found, law enforcement did consider the possibility that a .22 caliber gunshot could have caused that hole, especially knowing Sherilynn owned a small caliber handgun that was missing from the family's belongings. More on that later. However, after consulting forensic experts, the investigators eventually announced that they did not believe the hole was from a bullet. It might have been due to animal scavenging or another cause. Not everyone agreed. The hunters who found the bodies have publicly stated they suspect the hole was a bullet wound, but officially, the potential gunshot evidence was inconclusive and dropped as a lead. With the case now officially a triple unexplained death, the investigation ramped up again in 2013 to 2014. Latimer County, with assistance from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation and the FBI, took another hard look at the evidence, hoping that something had been missed or that relationships had changed in the past 4 years that might cause witnesses to come forward. Sadly, despite re-interviewing many people and following up on old and new tips, authorities admitted they were no closer to understanding what happened to the Jamisons. As Sheriff Beauchamp put it before he eventually left the department, with this family, everything seems possible. Over time, a number of theories, some grounded in evidence, others wild and speculative, have emerged to explain the Jamison family's bizarre disappearance and deaths. Investigators themselves have explored many of them without arriving at any definitive conclusion. Let's examine the leading theories and strange clues one by one. One of the most puzzling clues in this case came from the Jamisons' own home security camera footage, which investigators pulled from the family's residence after they vanished. The surveillance video, time-stamped on the morning of October 8, 2009, the day they left home, shows Bobby and Sherilynn Jamison in front of their house making multiple trips between the house and their truck as they pack for their outing. This would seem ordinary, except that observers have described the couple's behavior in the video as extremely odd. They move in a dreamlike or trance-like state, walking slowly back and forth about 20 times, sometimes carrying nothing at all, and occasionally stopping to just stand and stare with vacant expressions. They do not appear to talk to each other at all during these trips, and their mannerisms are, as one deputy put it, like zombies. Investigators initially considered whether this strange behavior could indicate the influence of drugs, such as methamphetamine, given how meth abuse can cause disorientation or repetitive behavior. The Jamisons also looked noticeably thin and gaunt in the footage, which some thought might hint at drug use or simply the stress and ill health they were experiencing. However, a thorough search of the Jamison home after they went missing found no drugs or paraphernalia, no meth, no marijuana, nothing illegal. Also, family and friends strongly denied that Bobby or Sherilynn were known to abuse drugs, aside from Sherilynn's prescription meds for her bipolar disorder. The trance video, as it's sometimes called, remains a bizarre piece of the puzzle. It's been theorized that perhaps the couple was high on something we don't know about, or maybe they were under extreme stress or even in an argument, hence not speaking. Some have even speculated about paranormal or occult influence making them behave oddly, but there's no evidence to support supernatural explanations. A friend, Nikki Shenold, who watched the footage closely, has a more sinister take. She believes the video may show a third person present at the Jamison home that morning. Nikki points out that at one moment in the video, Bobby is seen wearing a white t-shirt, walking to the truck, and apparently getting in on the driver's side. Later, a man in a brown shirt is seen walking back and forth, and Nikki is adamant this is not Bobby, but someone else. She suggests that if you watch closely, you never see Bobby exit the truck once he's gotten in, meaning whoever is in the brown shirt would be a different person. Investigators have not confirmed this interpretation, and many who have watched the grainy video are unconvinced. It could simply be Bobby changing shirts or a trick of poor video quality. But Nikki believes the family was being watched or accompanied by someone that day, which, if true, could mean foul play was afoot even before they left the driveway. Law enforcement has not publicly endorsed the third-person theory, and the video remains ambiguous. What is clear is that Sherilynn is seen in the video placing a large brown briefcase into the truck at one point. Oddly, when the truck was found, no briefcase was there, and it has never been located since. Also notably missing was Sherilynn's .22 caliber pistol, which she was known to carry in the truck for protection, and which presumably would have been brought along on the trip. That gun was not found in the truck or with the remains, and its disappearance could be a critical clue if foul play occurred.